Let me see. So, not yet there. Maybe I introduce Jimi Neal while we're waiting for him, and then I would try. Oh, he got the message, I think. I would try to call him. Pamela keeps us on our toes. Do I have to press something? No. So welcome back to Tushita, to the Days of Miracle program. And today we're still on Losar, so we're still honoring Lama Yeshe's anniversary of passing away in 1984. It was March 3rd. Lama Yeshe is the founder of our organization, FPMT, the Foundation of the Preservation of the Mahayana tradition, of which Tushita is part of. Yeah, so our main monastery is Kopan Monastery in Kathmandu, and Tushita was actually the second center, and then many followed as we learned. Who spoke about the centers yesterday? Venerable Robina, she talked about Chenrezig Institute in Australia, then of course Instituto Lama Zopa in Italy. It was one of our first centers and so on. So nowadays we have 160 centers all around the world, and all because of the kindness of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, his main disciple, who is now our spiritual director. So without Lama Yeshe, we wouldn't be here. And so for the first 3 days of Losar, we invited some of Lama Yeshe's old students. So the old hippies, well, the elder students, yeah, quite amazing. I'm always, amazed what they're brought about the last 45 years, establishing all these centers, working really tirelessly. And Jimi Neal is one of them. So Jimi actually came to India in 71. So 1971, that is, before many of us were born, I guess. So he's been around in India for 50 years. So he's Indian for the Indians here. So he's definitely Indian, hippie at heart and Indian. And then he met Lama Yeshe in 1974 in Kopan, in one of the first courses there, and was ordained actually by Lama Yeshe. So he had been a monk for 15 years, staying at Nalanda Monastery in France, and then he, gave back his robes and then taught all over the world in the last many decades. So we are so very happy to have Jimi here. And do we have Jimi here? It's a big question. No, Pamela is shaking her head. So while we're waiting for Pamela, for Jimi, let me call him. Maybe Pamela, do you have a picture for us? Pamela wants to tell us about Losar while we're waiting for Jimi.
Sure, Kumbila, yeah. Let me try to share the screen. Good evening. Maybe some of you, it might be afternoon or morning. I'm Pema, director here at Tushita Meditation Center. So I have few pictures to share. Actually, it's from temple, His Holiness Temple, which was closed for past 2 years, but it opened yesterday on the first day of Tibetan New Year. So I have few pictures to share. I think many of you might like to have a look. So let me try to get the photographs. Give me 2 minutes, please. Here we go. Okay, can everybody see my screen? All right, so here we have the photograph of green Tara, which is there in, no? You can't see? It's too tiny? Kumbhala, just give me a sec. Can you all see? No? No. Can't see. It's too tiny. Is it better now? Just give me a sec. Let me try again. I'm so sorry. Full screen. No? No? What am I doing wrong? I'm so sorry. Oh. Can you pick one? Just give me a second.
Okay, are you in? Are you with us? Well, Pamela is trying to entertain people. Oops. Jamila is here.
All right, so sorry.
No worries.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
What did you hear? Pamela is entertaining everybody.
No, I couldn't do that. It wasn't successful. I'm so sorry. Where's Jamila? Oh, okay. Just give me a sec.
So sorry, everybody, for technical difficulties. It's my fault. Wrong link.
Okay. Jimi. All right.
Hey, Jamila. Can you see us, Jimmy?
Yeah, I can see you all on the little top screen. Fortunately, I'm just seeing me right now. I'd rather be looking at one of you.
Have a look at gallery view. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Now I have you and me on the screen. Okay, so is it on? Are we on?
Perfect. Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jamila, back to Tushita. Thank you so much for us, Jamila, from the US, I believe. So this is why I put on the time. So it's very early in the US, I believe, Jamila.
Yeah, too early.
Too early for story time, but
no. Yeah, I got up because usually it's all spontaneous talking about Lama, but anyway, here we are, it's gonna happen.
I introduced you already, Jamila, and we are so happy to have you here. And we are here with Venerable Sayana, who is translating into Italian, and Venerable Paloma translating into Spanish. So,
hey, good, fantastic. So anyway, where I'm going to start this off, it's even just like a teaching, I'm going to start off with refuge and a few things. And then basically, I'm going to go through the 7 limb puja because one of the links, I'll explain it as we go. So what before we take refuge, and this is important, whenever you take refuge, it's like life is a sadhana. You should always visualize above your crown the refuge objects. You should always do that. That way it's also at the end you can absorb them, and we might even do that if we have time to actually go through the different stages of absorption. I was listening all day yesterday, Losar, to Lama Yeshe teachings, and on 2 of them he talks about the importance of going through the different stages of absorption, so that we might even get it in. I was having doubts before I heard him. So I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Community. By the practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodan soki chonam ha changchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jin sokgi pe sonam ki Dola penchir sangye drupa shok sangye chodan soki chonam ha changchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jin soki pe sonam ki Dola penchir sangye drupa shok. So always, I hope you heard what I said. When we take refuge, we should be taking refuge from something we visualize a merit field. It's clear in a sadhana. In a sadhana, you visualize the deity, say a Tara or Lama Losang Dubang Dorji Chang and the Lama Chopa. Guru, basically it's Guru. Guru Yidam is always the thing that we're doing. So it's good to keep that in mind when we practice. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings never be separated from bliss, which is free from sorrow, and may all beings abide in a state of equanimity, free of the extremes of attachment and aversion, greed and hatred. So, of course, one of the reasons I'm going to give the 7 limb puja here, it's a 7 limb puja from the Lama Yeshe used. It's written by the Dalai Lama when he's 19 years old. It's the one we do in all of our Tara sadhanas, that what we do, which also comes from Lama, the abbreviated one. Because when we get to the couple of the verses, it makes perfect sense what's happening with Lama. Because the Dalai Lama, when he was 19, understood. So the 7 limb prayer. And the main thing, no matter what we're practicing, no matter what we're doing, we're listening to teachings on Lama Zopa, if we listen to Lama Yeshe, we have to have the motivation of bodhicitta always there, always there. There's just no question about it. That's why we're here. It's not entertainment. Lama's very entertaining, but he's serious about what he does, Bam. So always emptiness has to be there. and then always the motivation of bodhicitta. So often the Heart Sutra is read at the beginning so that everything is covered by emptiness. But as we go through the 7-limb prayer, we'll see how the Lamas taught us to do everything in emptiness. So the first one is prostrating. This is written by the Dalai Lama when he was 19 years old. Incredible. Your liberating body is fully adorned with all the signs of a Buddha. Your melodious speech, complete with all 60 rhythms, flows without hesitation. Your vast, profound mind filled with wisdom and compassion is beyond all conceptions. I prostrate to the wheel of these 3 secret adornments of your body, speech, and mind. Okay, so from the very first course, which we'll get to, where I met Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, that's coming. From the beginning, you have to remember, Lama Zopa was teaching, they seemed to be so different. Lama Zopa would drive us crazy, et cetera, but Lama Yeshe come in, boom, but everything that Lama Zopa was doing was Lama Yeshe. They're inseparable. For years, I see this one's easier to understand than the other. No, they're one being. And so it's all coming from Lama. So every time you do prostration, you do it in the circle of the 3. Everything that you practice. So starting out with prostration, the object you're prostrating to, yourself prostrating, the act of prostrating are all an interdependent arising. Therefore, the whole process is done in emptiness. And the same with the next verse, offerings. Material, the offerings, the object of our offering and ourselves offering are all done in the circle of 3. And this way we should do everything. Material offerings of my own and others, the actual objects and those that I visualize, body and wealth and all virtues amassed throughout the 3 times, I offer to you upon visualized oceans of clouds like Samantabhadra's offerings. So again, it's done in emptiness, and everything's done in the Samantabhadra way. How you imagine, you increase your merit. Lama Zopa is all about merit. Lama Yeshe all about merit. Sometime deep down, Lama Yeshe, as we will find out, is about communicating. So then confessing, my mind being oppressed by the stifling darkness of ignorance. I've done many wrongs against reason and vows, whatever mistakes I've made in the past. With a deep sense of regret, I pledge never to repeat them. And without reservation, I confess everything to you. From the depths of my heart, I rejoice in the enlightening deeds of the sublime masters, and in the virtuous actions, past, present, and future, performed by myself and all others as well, and by ordinary exalted beings of the 3 sacred traditions. Now requesting. This is the one where it takes us to Lama Yeshe. He chose this 7-limb puja to use. It was given by the Dalai Lama when he was 19 years old. He wrote it. It's mind-blowing in a sense. The people begged the Dalai Lama to write a sadhana about himself. And he says, I can't write a sadhana about myself. That's heretical to write a sadhana about myself. I can't do that. And they begged him and begged him. So that's where we get this sadhana, which is the union of the spiritual master and Avalokiteshvara, which is what Lama Yeshe chose, and including this 7-limb prayer when he taught becoming the enlightened, becoming the compassion Buddha, how to arise as Chenrezig. So this verse just nails it. It's where Lama Yeshe comes together with his holiness and with this practice of requesting. I request you to awaken every living being from the sleep of ordinary and instinctive defilements with the divine music of the Dharma's pure truth, resounding with the melody of profoundness and peace, and in accordance with the dispositions of your various disciples. There we have it. There you have Lama Yeshe. He was a guru who taught uniquely according to the dispositions of the various disciples. It wasn't cookie cutter. It wasn't like, this is the Dharma, this is the Lam Rim, boom, boom, boom. Every person he taught to, and every national group he taught to, he taught according to them, according to what they need individually. And this is Buddha activity, isn't it? This is the real example of Buddha activity in a real common sense, down to earth way. As we will see as we tell the stories. And there's many stories that come up about how he told this person to do like this and somebody else, no, you do like that. And that this will come. So anyway, I'll finish the 7 limbs. I entreat you to firmly establish your feet in the indestructible Vajra throne in the indissoluble state of Ivam until every sentient being gains the calm breath of joy in the state of final realization, unfettered by the extremes of worldliness or tranquil liberation. So this is another thing that's the essence of what Lama basically, and Lama Zopa, according to Lama Yeshe, says, I teach 2 things. I teach the Lam Rim, the graduated path. I teach the Lam Rim and Vajrasattva, Haruka Vajrasattva. Those were the 2 limbs of Lama Yeshe's teachings. Lam Rim, and in Lam Rim, he did it through Rinpoche. Lam Rim, the Rim, the Rim, the Rim, you know, and then Haruka Vajrasattva. Because so much of what it was generated for Tantra, we'll find out later what about Haruka, because Lama was Haruka and he follows the Haruka lineage, and I'll explain to you later some things that he told me about that. So those were the 2 limbs of enlightenment. So this verse is the same. It talks about, until I entreat you to firmly establish your feet upon the indestructible Vajra throne in the indissoluble state of Ivam until every sentient being gains the calm breath of joy. So that's Vajrasattva. We think of Vajrasattva as what's Vajrasattva? We think of what's this purifying deity. We do purification retreat of Vajrasattva, which of course isn't wrong. But what is Vajrasattva? Lama's teaching Vajrasattva, indestructible being. Vajrasattva is purifying, but the essence of Vajrasattva is it is the union of the guru, in this case Lama Yeshe, and the Yidam, we'll say Haruka or we'll say Tara, and our subtle mind. So the whole idea, when it comes down to the heart, that's Vajrasattva, the indestructible union of those 3. That is what is Vajrasattva, really, the exact precise Vajrasattva. And then also for taking an initiation. People get confused. They take an initiation of highest yoga tantra and it's their first one, and is just the Vaz initiation goes on for hours and it's ritual, all this stuff, and people go, I don't even know if I got the initiation or not. But if you follow the advice of Lama Yeshe, or you follow the advice of, if you, during that initiation, if you bring during the initiation, the preceptor, we'll say it's Lama Yeshe in this case, say he's giving an initiation. My first one was Chenre Zig, or he's giving one on Tara, which is his principal one. At one point, the Zahum Bam Ho, you bring them down to your heart, and you can be assured you got the initiation if you do that. If you didn't understand any of the ritual, if you brought the guru and the Yidam to your heart, because at your heart is your subtlest mind, that is Vajrasattva, the indestructible union of those 3. And it comes up again when we do the succession guru yoga. It's what's happening, isn't it? We're bringing the guru down to our heart. So, and then the dedication. I dedicate all my virtuous actions of the 3 times so I may receive continuous care from a master and attain full enlightenment for the benefit of all through accomplishing my prayers, the supreme deed of Samanta Bhadra. Okay, so then my meeting with Lama Yeshe, I'll give a little bit of background. I went to Nepal in 1971, Nepal and India, and I didn't meet the lamas. The first time I met Rinpoche, he said, when did you come to Nepal? I said, then you were at the first course? He said, no, Rinpoche, I wasn't at the first course. I said, I was over in Bodha, smoking chillums, or doing other things. I said, I didn't say that. And then Lama Zopa goes like this. He goes like this. Oh, yeah, I know I did. I go, yeah. But when I was over there doing that, I went to the Mahakala Puja every day, made Kora every day. I had it connected. But when I left India that time, it was a short visit, India and Nepal. I felt like you wasted my time. I wasted my time without even knowing what a precious human rebirth was, because I came here and I didn't drink the nectar of Dharma somehow. So I went back to America. I earned enough money working a year to come back for 4 years. and then coming back after 4 years. Was on my way back to India with a friend that I traveled with the first time, and he said, we finished our jobs. He was in California, I was in Seattle. And he said, maybe we're going over to India. You should come to this kind of Sufi camp. You know, it's like the great Sufi master in Chamonix in France, you know. And so, and they had also lamas there. It was lots of things happening as a way of moving from job America to going back to the East. And at that point, I know Buddhism was what I wanted. I know, and I pretty much knew it was Tibetan. Because I had some friends in the 60s who became monks in the Chinese tradition, and they're very strict, very, very incredible strict they practiced. And just meeting them, I had no doubt about rebirth. Because one friend of mine, the first time I went there, he'd been in this monastery for 6 months, and he was translating. This is somebody I knew from childhood, eloquent Chinese philosophy after 6 months. So there was no doubt about past life. And then the master says, you people have been crisscrossing lives for a long time. So I met the Dharma with them, but it was a little, it was pretty hardcore in that sense. Yeah, and then all this comes together with Lama somehow, you know. So already I'm going back, and I know it's Tibetan Buddhism, but I don't know where or what I'm going to do. We're going to go back to the East. So I volunteered at the work camp of this, because we couldn't just hang around France, you know, with our little bit of travel money. And so we could move up there for the work camp. And in the work camp, there's a poster, and it said, 7th meditation course, Kopan Monastery, Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Bam! I said, okay, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. That's I don't have to be wondering what I'm going to be doing in the next part of my life. I'm going there, and I'm going to go take that course. I didn't know anything about Lama Yeshe or Lama Zopa Rinpoche at that time, but somehow it just came clear. And I'd been making prayers before I'd given up praying when I kind of gave up Christianity. I read Camus' The Stranger, and I don't kind of pray anymore, you know, but I was praying before I did the first Kopan course that I would meet my master somehow. I would meet the guru, setting up the causes for that, because before the course actually started. So then I went to the 7th Kopan course, and it was the way the courses were back then. There was a big tent. There was no gompa that would hold everybody. It was a big tent. Over 200 people were in this tent. Yeah, the conditions were pretty funky, but wow, you know, it was spending all that time with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Lama Yeshe less. So anyway, the teachings were intense. My friends who went with me from Sufi camp, they left after 2 days of Lama Zopa Rinpoche talking about hells and talking about Actually, for the first 2 weeks of that course, Lama Zopa Rinpoche taught the hell realms. He taught the 8 worldly dharmas, and he taught how Atisha, who brought this lineage, the new translation lineage from India to Tibet, lived in a house with a castle with 100,000 swimming pools from Bengal. So he would teach that, you know, and so again, he was teaching these things, but he was teaching lots of other things as well, of course. So he really poured it on. And so an attachment, how attachment, all evil comes from attachment if we're attached. You know, our permanent address is the lower realms. You know, Rinpoche, you people know. Your permanent address is the lower realms. So yeah, so you can see why my friends left. We're not staying around here. We're about Sufism, which is about love and peace and happiness. You know, we're not into this. So anyway, yeah, it's so then after getting those teachings, and somehow something kept the people there. It drove a lot of people away, but the way Rinpoche often does, he doesn't care, he doesn't hold anything back. And then the people that leave maybe should have left. They're not ready for it yet. You know, they're not ready. If they can't hear that, if they can't sit there and listen and start judging, and this is all crap because it goes against my preconceptions. Then something keeps you there. something very powerful coming out of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And then the first time Lama Yeshe, the first time I ever saw him or met him, he comes running into the tent, like he's running in, and he sits on the throne and he says, "Who says attachment's all bad?" And everybody's going, "Wow, yeah, I like the fat one." The skinny one just teaches hells all the time, and how attachment's the worst thing in the world. And Lama Yeshe says, and you could see how they're working, these two lamas. And so he says, if it wasn't for attachment, you wouldn't have this precious human rebirth, which we'd also been hearing about for 2 weeks. If mom and daddy didn't come together, you wouldn't have this precious human rebirth. So you can't say it's all bad, attachment, so it has its place, It's still, it doesn't take anything away from it being the root of samsara. And he wasn't saying that attachment's okay. He was, as you'll see, he taught very much that attachment's the root of the problem. And so, yeah, Lama Yeshe came in and he just goes boom. And the thing is about Lama Yeshe, as when I read that verse about one who can teach according to what we need, Lama Yeshe was always about communicating. He says, communication was everything with him. Are we communicating or not? Are we communicating or not? That's what I meant. Am I communicating with this person? Because they're a little bit different than that person. And so, but also he was always trying to keep things in balance. Because some people took the Dharma, it's not like they took it so seriously. There's been serious, you want to take serious in terms of practicing, but they took it to use it against themselves, to almost get depressed. Oh, it's all hells, it's all this, it's all that. I'm no good, I'm bad, which is total misinterpretation of Rinpoche, isn't it? But a lot of people would get that way. They'd be really hardcore. And Lama Yeshe tried to cut through that all the time, He would cut through it, because it's same Dharma. And I used to think that, Rinpoche was the heavy one and Lama was the light, happy, laughing one. Boy, it's the other way around. Lama was the one, whoa, and and Rinpoche is actually a softy underneath it all when you get to know him. He's quite a softy, but he was having to teach all this stuff, So, for example, I'll give an example. There was a student, I can't remember, maybe she was a nun, and she was just kind of during this time of these courses. I might confabulate the courses because I did the next course, the 8th, and then did the next one, the 9th, and then in between I was at Tushita with Lama. So what happened at the courses, but anyway, I think it was the first one. And some people would go, "Oh, I'm going to go to hell," or this or that. There was somebody every time he'd ask a question, and Lama would say, "Lighten up, let go, And he came up to someone who was doing that. This woman, I can't remember if she was a nun or not. She was kind of miserable because, I'm going to hell and this and that, and I'm not pure enough, and no. And so Lama said to her, I was a witness to this. "Are you enjoying your life, dear?" She goes, "No. I mean, yes. Because if she says yes, oh, then she's a sinner. If she says no, then she's not getting it, So yes, no, she's going back and forth. Yes, no. And Lama says, "You should enjoy your life, dear. You should at least enjoy your life." And he said to her, and he said once when he told the same story in the Gomp, he says, "You people can't get nirvana together. You should at least enjoy samsara." And he said something that's very, very profound. It's pure lojong, isn't it? A miserable mind can never be the cause of a happy mind. So don't use the Dharma to make yourself miserable. You're missing the point altogether, So yeah, he would just cut through. And so many of yesterday, I didn't have any clue what I'm going to do today. I scribbled down 1,000 stories about Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe. I mean, things that happened in different contexts when I was there. And all I could do is kind of scribble them down. And I thought, okay, I'll watch a few of his videos. So I spent, instead of taking morning priya from from time of precept time until nighttime, I just watch videos. I hope I'm going to get enough of this so I can give this talk tomorrow. You know, I'm always afraid I don't have anything to say. That's been always my thing, but it's always too much to say. So anyway, and so much of it is about that, Lama Yeshe's teaching. Well, because it's about emptiness, isn't it? He used to criticize us for being all self-pity. Self-pity me. And but it was all about shunyata in that sense. It's all about seeing things empty. From the beginning, emptiness is being taught with where you are right now, where you are. This is the situation. Emptiness is being taught. So what's the situation at Kopan in Nepal, Kathmandu in 1974? It was funky, but who cares? So you have two types of people that come to Nepal, and that some people, what they see Nepal. We're looking at the same Nepal, same object, isn't it? And they're looking at Nepal and go, you know, they get off the plane from Switzerland or whatever. This place is a shithole. It stinks. We even had Pig Street, and now we just shit everywhere. Like, oh, this is the worst place on the planet, Nepal, you know? And then people like me and others get off, wow, this is a Pure Land. I've arrived at a Pure Land. And it's the same object. It shows the emptiness of Kathmandu. You can do that with anything. And Lama, it was taught a lot, you know? It's the emptiness of the place. We think it's this, we think it's that. We think what appears to us, that's the way it is. And we judge it good or bad. Why it's so important, the Heart Sutra, the emptiness is the basis of all the teachings. The Heart Sutra is read first, because I suppose the essence of the Heart Sutra is the Buddha wasn't teaching it, so he did it through Shariputra and he did it through Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara represented the Mahayana and Shariputra represented the way of the monks, you know, the Theravada sort of. Hinayana is a pejorative term, we don't use it. So, and he said he looked down and he beheld the 5 skandhas, and in their own being, they were empty. And then it goes on from there. And so what were these skandhas? The Buddha organized ourselves into 2 things. We're body and we're mind, isn't it? Nama Rupa. But he divided up the mind. So body is like form, the first of the skandhas, form. And then the other skandhas are feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. So you have consciousness, mind divided into 2. Consciousnesses are the primary consciousnesses. Sense consciousness, 5 sense consciousness, direct, gross mental consciousness. And then we have 49 or 51 mental factors. Mental factors are just a division. Theravada, they have 40. It doesn't matter. They're just a way of dividing the mind into different things. So the mental factors are these things that arise and they fall, aren't they? We know what mental factors are, hopefully by now. So he gave an entire mental factor to feeling. And he gave an entire mental factor to perceptions, and all the rest of them were lumped together in this karmic formations. Why did the Buddha do that? Because when something appears to us, it appears as if existence from its own side until we realize shunyata. It appears self-existent. And everything that appears to us, the consciousness of feeling, what feeling is decides, I like this, I don't like that. You know, this I like, this I don't like, that I don't care about. So everything that appears has those 3. The feeling comes up. Feeling, the way the lamas use it, is obviously very different than the way we use it in the West, you know. Because I know people who are translating for great lamas, and somebody came in and said, oh, I got such great feelings when I went to the art festival or when I first met. I'm not talking about those kind of feelings. It's talking about very precise what is feelings. We like something that feels good, something that feels bad, something we don't care. So that's the first thing that happens based on something appearing, and appearing as if it's existent from its own side. And then perception goes, I want this, I don't want that. So our whole life in samsara is about, I want these good things, I don't want these bad things. And it all comes from those two, doesn't it? So he was very skillful when the Buddha put those together, because there's all these really important ones, because all we're doing is we're working with all of those other ones, include all the negative and positive mental factors, etc. So it was so important. And then also, he called them, this is Lord Buddha, he called them skandhas, and they're translated as aggregates. It's a horrible translation, because skandhas mean heaps, like a pile of sand, a pile of dust. We have a heap. What we are is 5 heaps, 5 piles, you know. It's so we don't think what we are is so concrete. The whole problem is we think we're so concrete. All Lama's teachings is to cut through that. We think we're so, I am this, I am self-existent, other is self-existent because I'm self-existent. So he put us in those, you know, so what we are is these minds and body in these different parts, and they're just a pile of each, like there's a pile of dust. Or sometimes they'll use, someone like Thich Nhat Hanh will use rivers. You know, there's 5 rivers flowing in. It's not that we consist of 5 heaps. There's 5 different rivers flowing through us. There's meaning that there's nothing to grasp. They're always changing. They're impermanent phenomena, and which is empty, basically. So much of what Lama was teaching was around that. So in the interaction with Lama, he would teach according to the disposition of his various disciples, like it says in that prayer. Because basically, what's the 7 then puja is basically the entire path, isn't it? You know, each one, prostration and offering, they're for getting merit, and the others are for purifying. But besides gaining merit, we know if we want to be born human, we have to just ahimsa. If we're kind, if we don't harm others, guaranteed a human birth. Just that. But that's not good enough, isn't it? That's not good enough. A human birth, there's a lot of really, really horrible human births on this planet, you know, and who knows where else. So by non-harming, we get born human. And then so by generosity, we get born human with all the other things we need. In Tibetan, it's dalajor, isn't it? It's leisure and endowments. Leisure and endowments. And endowments, everything we need. We need a perfect body that works, etc., 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 etc. We need to take birth in a place where there's still Dharma. We need that the Dharma is still being taught, the Dharma is still being practiced, etc., etc. So, but there's one other thing we need. We need to find a teacher. It's not good enough to be born human with everything we need. We need to meet the Dharma. And how do we meet the Dharma? Through the Guru. Guru and Dharma. That's our gateway. Our gateway to the Dharma is whoever teaches it to us. You know, it has to be that channel was open. So that's the other thing we pray for. If we want to get, and we must have done this. This is where we can bring the rejoicing limb. Hey, we met these great lamas. We're born human. We met a perfect Dharma conditions. And we, and yet when we met these teachers, so we must have done all that before. We must have a condition before. We must have prayed. And that's the reason why I think the biggest regret I have now, I'm an old guy teaching young people, you know, don't do it like me. Don't waste your precious human rebirth. You should be practicing almost all the time. You know, like you meet these beings. How can you have met Solomon Rinpoche and the Dalai Lama and still be spending all your time on YouTube where we're talking about vaccinations in Ukraine, you know? God, spend that time, you know. Yesterday was the first time I said, I'm not watching anything online except Lama's teaching. So I just spent the whole day Don't suck it out a day watching his teachings. You should be doing that all the time, at least part of the time. It's like in the very first teachings that were given in our first Kopan course also is so important. In the very first teachings that are given before you start going to the Lama and before the Four Noble Truths is the 8 worldly dharmas, isn't it? Teach the 8 worldly dharmas. Loss and gain, pleasure, pain, euphemy, defamation, praise and blame. And you, this is where the poor woman who was all said, I'm just a disaster. I mean, I looked at it too. I looked at 8 worldly dharmas. That's all I do is the 8 worldly dharmas. You know, remember she's teaching the 8 worldly dharmas. You know, well, that's okay at first. You know what to do. You understand what you're doing. You understand yourself. You know? And so you don't think, well, it's impossible because everything I do is for loss and gain, pleasure, pain. Everything that I do. Some people emphasize some more than another. Some people can be very renounced. People I've been very close with. Pleasure, pain, no big deal. Loss and gain, no big deal. But reputation, they go berserk. Their reputation, they're so attached to their reputation. So that was, Rinpoche was teaching, and the reason it's taught also is because what runs through the 8 worldly dharmas is fear. Fear that I won't get what I want. Fear I'll get what I don't want. All fear comes through that, you know. That's where fear comes from, overcoming all fears. So, then again, we go back to the Heart Sutra. We have fear. And we're going to have fear. We think, oh, I shouldn't have these things. I shouldn't have these mental qualities. I shouldn't engage in these things. I'm no good. You know, we use the Dharma like the same example. Oh, I have worldly dharma, so, you know, I'm hopeless. The Dharma isn't supposed to show that we're hopeless. The Dharma is supposed to show us that we have absolute hope. There's a possibility. And in the Heart Sutra, it goes through all of the different things. No tongue, no body, no mind, no da-da-da. And what are the last ones? It goes to the Four Noble Truths, all the sacred things of Buddhism. It goes no, meaning not self-existent. No suffering, no cause, no cessation, no path. And then what's the last one? It goes no attainment and no non-attainment. And when the Bodhisattva really realizes that there's no attainment, he overcomes all fear. And until we reach the stage of emptiness, there's going to be fear. We're going to lessen the fear. We're going to understand the fear and learn how to work with it. These are things that we have to work with now. Lama was so good about bringing us to where we are now. When you would come to what the first things he would say during a meditation course, he says, this course is about the mind, but it's not about mind in general. It's about your mind. This course is about you. He would teach everything about you, this course, about you looking at yourself and looking, you know, finding out who you are, what you're doing. It's the only way you can learn the Dharma. It's not going to learn it through Dharma theory, you know, through intellectual, trying to understand things. You have to learn it in a very real and practical way. So everything he brought into the experience of ourselves and trying to find out, there's a really nice topic you can get online about knowing who you are before you engage in other things. You have to understand yourself. And when he teaches emptiness, he's teaching, when we teach the emptiness of, he's giving the example of problems with man and wife. He says man and wife. I know that's politically incorrect, but Lama said it. It was okay then. So you're thinking, you're looking at yourself. And I'm the husband, she's the wife, so I'm the wife, she's the husband. And the whole point of seeing who you are, seeing that this view we have of myself, I'm a husband, I'm a man, I'm this, I'm that, I'm all the different things we think we are, all the divisions, you know, I'm black, I'm white, I'm rich, I'm poor, all the things that we have, all this politics over now, is that's empty. So as long as you don't see yourself as concrete, you're going to see the other person that you're with as concrete and all their delusions as concrete. So much important that we start working on ourselves before we project it all onto others. So Lama would figure out how They're very different examples, and then we'll come to some of those later. But then I'm going to come to the big one here. Maybe the biggest thing that Lama was unbelievable. The second course, I went to 8th course. Meanwhile, Lama went to America, right? He went to America and he came back. So he comes back after America. He comes back after this 8th course, and for the 8th course. And he starts talking about, because when he went to America, you know how the people always take the lamas, they take the geshis, they take them to the department store or the supermarket. Look at all these wonderful things, look, great, And most of the geshis of the lamas say, yeah, I want to buy 50 watches for my relatives back in Dharamsala or whatever. And, and Lama Yeshe, they took him to a supermarket and he goes, he sees 6 kinds of cornflakes and 6 kinds of this and 6 kinds of that. And he goes, what's the difference? What's the difference? The difference is advertising. That's the only difference. He taught about advertising. Boy, did he get it. He went to the whole point. One time I was watching television with him. One thing that was good, I did the 3 courses. I did the 3 courses at 7th, 8th, and 9th, and then I had to go back to America. What a horrible thing. And then it was the Yucca Valley course with Lama and Rinpoche, right away out to the desert with the 2 lamas. What a good way for re-entry. Watching television with Lama, he just wants to watch the ads. Why don't you want to watch the movie, Lama? Oh, what's the ads? These are the people in your country who understand how you think. These are the people in your country who understand how you think, the people who make advertising. And he got it. What we're doing, we have our Dharma job is this, to realize shunyata and do everything with bodhisattva motivation, isn't it? But what is our job in between? It's working with disturbing emotions, isn't it? Attachment and aversion, etc. That's our whole thing. That's our whole path, working with it. In some ways, some people teach like Sangha Kado. Yeah, this is our job, And so we're trying to overcome attachment. And we have a multi-trillion-dollar industry that is professionally teaching us to be more attached, using every possible device to make us more attached. Incredible. And so he realized that's our problem. We come to learn how to overcome attachment, but we're going to go there and everything wants us. You got to have this, or you're impoverished. You got to have this one. You got to be more beautiful. You got to have that. It's like, wow, it's bad enough back in, being a peasant in Tibet, where everything is simple. One point of concentration comes more easily because you're not all distracted. But also it's like you got to give up attachment to maybe your yaks, your butter tea or whatever, And we are constantly being hit with things that we've got to have. We've got to have them. So Lama went to the point, he was unbelievable to see that. Incredible. Here's this, and I never met the Lama. He right away, he understood. One thing that Lama, he was asked by His Holiness to teach Dharma to the Westerners. So he wanted to understand everything about Westerners. How we think, how we feel. Not just, oh, we're stupid because we do dumb things, not just like that, So he wanted to know everything, how our minds work. And we'll come to it in a minute, how, different people, different groups of people, Italians think different than English, than Americans, et cetera, et cetera. He got that right away. We're going to teach people, you don't teach them the same way. This is Buddha activity. Yeah, this is a real Buddha activity happening all the time from Lama Yeshe. So he comes back and he explains this to us. He says, we have to advertise. He says, we got to advertise. And Lama Yeshe goes, I'm quoting him. He's on the throne at Kopan and he goes, Kopan. And he goes, we are going to teach orgasmic emptiness. Orgasmic emptiness. Come to our course and get that one. You know, like it's exactly the way they advertise things in the West. It's going to make you feel good and blissful and da-da-da. You mix it up with some image, you know, and then hook them in to get the teachings. Yeah, he just did exactly. He just was so amazing. Yeah, how are we going to do this? How are we going to overcome this culture of advertising and understanding the whole process, how we've been duped? If you understand, there was a guy called Bernays. He was the nephew of Freud, and he went to America in 1925, and he brought advertising there, basically, you know. I mean, before there was some kind of advertising, but he's the one who brought it there, you know. And she said, you show people how everything you buy, it shows your individuality, when it's in fact just the opposite. You wear all the same dress and all this, it shows your individuality. For a woman to smoke, it would show her individuality. So when they're all parading and smoking, it goes, yeah, good. You know, how to get people to do things. And the power of advertising to how you feel better if you have this, and if you have this and you have that. And so, excuse me. So Lama was all the time teaching according to what we actually needed and committed himself to that. And he committed that by having love and respect for all of us, even though we had all of this crap. That wish and compassion should arise even more for us who are under the delusion. We're being, you know, he was lucky to come out of a culture that's a little bit simpler in the sense of all of this, these temptations. Yeah, we're just gone, you know, with these things. So in other instances, where there were many instances where Lama understood the difference between one person and another person and what they needed. Like him and Lama Zopa were like good cop, bad cop. And Lama Yeshe set it all up. So somebody has Lama Zopa teach like that. And forgive me, because I'm old fashioned and I use Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe. I don't say, you know, Kabje, omniscient knower, the 3 times. We, from the depth of our heart, the highest beings in the planet, or Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe. And Lama Yeshe's called him, Lama Zopa say this to you. So I don't mean that to be casual about Rinpoche, not at all. There's a lot of things coming from a different generation. And so then there's so Lama, it's easy for people to hear all the teachings about suffering and think I'm no good, it's only suffering. And so even the way it's taught, I mean, Tenzin Palmo said this very perfectly. It said, suffering is a bad word. It's for dukkha. We use the word suffering for dukkha. I get this big advertisement that comes across that I've got to renew my VPN. So, so it's the use of the words. Suffering's too, dukkha, suffering is a bad translation for dukkha. Oh, I'm suffering, I'm bad, it's all bad. It's so total, you know. Word like Tenzin Palmo says, dukkha actually means the opposite of sukha. Sukha, and what does sukha mean? It means completely open. It means open, spacious. We're trying to get to a state of being open. And Lama Yeshe, he liked to use our words. He had very narrow vocabulary. It was interesting going back and reading Big Love. It was Rinpoche who taught knew English. Lama didn't know any English. But the few words he used, he took those words and used them better than we did with that limited language, you know. And he says, I like these hippie words. They really describe things. And one was uptight. He says uptight. So the opposite of sukha, suffering, is uptight. And we know that at a deeper level, also in the level of tantras, it's because an emotion is not just a thought. An emotion is the movement of the prana, of the lung, of the winds within us, isn't it? When we're angry, we get uptight. When we have all these things, we get uptight. It's the movement. There's two sides to it. That's why we also need the tantras. Lama was so big about that. We'll come to that. We need the time. We need to start working with the inner channels, winds and drops, because You can work both ends. You can work with the mental to overcome delusions, and you can work with the physical by pranayama and bringing air into the central channel, all these things, and identifying with the deity. All of these are what we use to practice the Dharma. So he says, I like this word, uptight, uptight. Good description. He says, it is a good description, isn't it? It says, don't be so uptight, as opposed to being open. And he would use other words. He would misuse words, but they were better. Like instead of sexual misconduct, Lama Yeshe said sexual miscontact. Like that, And he would say in debate vanquished, he'd say he vanished the other person, He would use these English words, and it was great. He was more effective with using the language of this, and he would always be listening. And that's why he got the whole thing with advertising, etc. Yeah, going back to advertising a little bit. I like to use these when I'm teaching these courses, and we take an example of something. We'll take an example of a perfume, an expensive perfume. We'll say Chanel No. 5, okay? We'll say that. And I guess I should have this down because I'm not seeing my body. I'm just seeing somebody else. And so, so anyway, Chanel No. 5 perfume. The perfume costs $1. The cut glass container it comes in costs $3, and all the rest is advertising. All the rest is advertising. And it turns out that, Chanel No. 5 is the same scent of rhododendron oil that you can buy in Pahargans for, how many rupees a little bottle, pretty much the same thing. And yet it's all about advertising. And I remember the advertising online. I was into it because always the most beautiful women in the world would be advertising Chanel No. 5. The first one was Catherine Deneuve in the 50s. She was the Chanel No. 5 woman. And then in my time, there was, at the time when I was a monk in the land in France, it was Carole Bouquet. Carole Bouquet was this incredible actress, like, wow, that Louis Buñuel first used in his films, So she was the one, she would say, shares the fantasy, Chanel No. 5. So people pay $100 for the dollar perfume, and all advertising. And I love it. The Americans are kind of almost crass compared to the French for the advertising. So anyway, I was the shopper when I was in the land in the 80s. And so you could see the things in the shops. And at that time, the two perfumes that were the big perfumes that you had to have, they cost $100 a bottle, easy, whatever. One was called Samsara. They even named the perfume Samsara. They know what they're doing. Yeah, buy Samsara. They're clear about the game they're playing. They know they have the power of getting you. Yeah, and the other one is opium. The two big addictions, aren't they? Samsara's, opium's the symbol for crude addiction, and samsara is about being addicted. The Lamas teach us, the reason we're in samsara because we're attached to sex, we're attached to this, we're attached to that. This is taking away. Lama Yeshe, when he went in and said that, it was just to lighten up a little bit, stop. He tried to help people that were taking it too seriously in terms of using the Dharma to feel like they can never possibly practice because I can never be realized and never give up the 8 worldly Dharmas, which is hard sometimes, isn't it, when we're practicing? And then you'll take different lamas. Like the thing is like probably the most powerful and wise and realized lama that I ever met was Chotrul Rinpoche, Chotrul Rinpoche. But there was lama who could teach us, The first time Chotrul Rinpoche went to America, see, Lama Yeshe goes there and he wants to know how we think and this. He wants to know all about us. He's going there. And so Chotrul Rinpoche, he was in the car and with the translator, he's going to Wisconsin to see Geshe Zopa, I guess. And now he sees people that are playing tennis. And he goes, what are they doing? What are those people doing? And the translator explains to Song Rinpoche, and he says, Dharma does not flourish in this country. Then you get the other extreme is like, no, they don't have Dharma here. If they'd waste their time doing that, if they'd waste their time doing that, they don't have Dharma. And of course, and even Song Rinpoche, after a while, he kind of realized that he's coming from the later times in those early days of seeing Song Rinpoche. It was one time in Barcelona, he was teaching, and he says, I'm the stupid one in the room, he says. And this is all Westerners, of course. And he points to the translator. He's half stupid because I don't understand your culture and he understands your culture halfway. So he pointed that out. He understood that why he's, he doesn't understand the culture. And, an 80-year-old man doesn't have time to figure out and get involved with figuring out the Western culture. He's better. He just teaches and is infinitely wise, etc., etc. And that's why the Dalai Lama, what does the Dalai Lama say about this? He says, with the 8 worldly dharmas and practicing Dharma all the time, he says, I always say 50-50, he says, His Holiness, 50% this life's work for this life and 50% for future lives, which is minimum of Dharma, ideally for enlightenment and awakening, isn't it? Those are the 3 levels of Dharma. So he does that, So, a little more workable. Just like when the Dalai Lama, he teaches when he taught the simple Lam Rim, he taught essence of refined gold, and a couple of Lam Rim teachings which I was fortunate enough to go to, that starts out with Guru is the root of the path. Guru is the root of the path. And he says, I know this is too much for some people. Because if you read Vasubandhu's, is it Vasubandhu? Ashvaghosha's 50 verses of Guru devotion, you go to hell if you step over the Guru's shoes, you go to hell if you step over his shadow. It's like, this is too much for you people. It's too much for me even. It's too much for me. So you put that on people and they bounce right off of a Guru right at the beginning. Oh my, Guru's almost a dirty word, like Guru. They're the ones that go after girls and the money, the idea of Gurus in the West sometimes, because of going back to the time of the Beatles and Maharajis. So, and he says, but on the other hand, it is everything. Rinpoche couldn't exaggerate enough about the Guru. The Guru is the root of the path. It's everything. It's everything. Like in this prayer, we've got to find someone that we can communicate with. And the Guru is about communicating with that Guru, Comes back to the same theme. Lama was about, am I communicating? Are we communicating or not? He would say, Guru is communication. Initiation is communication. Where he first said initiation is communication, this was in Kopan. There's 2 stories around Vajrasattva, because Lama Yeshe was Lam Rim, which we'd have Rinpoche take care of that one. And the bad cop, they go and torture us with the Lam Rim, and he would teach tantras and the Ruka Vajrasattva, etc. So the big thing was Vajrasattva, and so this was told to me by the people that were at the courses before me. The first times they did Vajrasattva, by my friends that were already ordained. When I first went to Kopan, you already had Yeshe Kadro and Bende and a few. They all were ordained at Bodhgaya the year before. Yeshe Kadro, and it was the Vajrasattva, which was a really big deal. The Vajrasattva retreat. When I did the Vajrasattva retreat, we know how important that was for Lama Yeshe. He said we should do it every year at some center. That became Tushita. And but the first time there was someone who took the initiation, and then they said, well, I'm not going to do this. I don't like this practice. I'm not going to do it. So they went running to Lama Yeshe. This person's going to go to hell. This person's going to go to hell because they took the initiation and they're not going to go to their train. Lama Yeshe says, what's the problem? We weren't communicating. Initiation is communication. He didn't get the initiation. There's obviously, if he's not going to do the practice, we weren't communicating. So he just, bam, he just cuts through this self-existent good bad thing that we tend to put on people. It goes right through it. And so and there's another example with someone I was very close with. Maybe some of you knew him. His name was Pelge. He was we were monks together. And it was the same with him. He was just, everybody was doing Vajrasattva that year. And Lama just said to Pelge, it wasn't even from a dialogue. Pelge didn't say, I'm not going to do it. He just says, no, you don't do this. He says, you meditate for 3 months on the 12 links. He understood Pelge's mind. He'll get the Dharma if he's meditating on the 12 links. It's all logical, reasonable, study that, meditate on that. Because Pelge is like many people, they can't stand the rituals. They can't deal with all of these other aspects, which, we come to love. We see that they have meaning. Some of them don't have meaning. All of my kind of Satipatthana friends or Vipassana friends they go, the Buddha said no mere rite and ritual, so you will practice just rites and rituals. He said mere rite and ritual. Some rituals have deep meaning. Mere rite and ritual for their own sake. And sometimes they do become a little bit for their own sake, but when you understand the meaning of them, they become very profound. They're a way to organize our ways of giving, and they become something very, very positive. So, and then there's an example where Pelge, where he saw the differences of the different cultures. And then there's another thing with the cultures. This is getting with the cultures of the different countries. The different countries. For example, one of my closest friends at the beginning of Dharma, I actually kind of brought him into Dharma, was named Stefano Piavello, the late, great Stefano Piavello, the wildest person I ever knew in my life. The Lamas loved him. They loved this guy. And unfortunately, I think he died of an overdose at the end, but I mean, he was very special in a way. But he said, he would teach me about the Lamas, he said, Lama went to Italy for 2 weeks and he understands more about the Italian psyche than I do. He meant that as a serious statement. That's a very serious statement, to understand how Italians think better than an Italian. That's inconceivable. There's no Lama on the planet do like that, And so he would teach accordingly. So a Lama is teaching in Italy and he says, you people shouldn't practice uptight English Dharma. You should practice mozzarella Dharma because you're Italian. And so it's the same Dharma, isn't it? He was teaching the same Dharma, but he's teaching about certain cultures. They get uptight about things and this and that, and that's not for you. It has to be according. So he could teach so effectively to Italians and to Americans because he understands. And he'd also take the piss out of both of them. That's an English expression that I got to use about teasing. He would tease the Californians all the time. It's very interesting because the tantrics in the FPMT were the Californians, Vajrapani, and were the Italians. They were the tantrics, tantra. So you'd have to kind of tease them a little bit, And Lama was very happy about that they practiced, very happy. So another example where he was doing it with Americans, he was teaching it. This was at the Yucca Valley course. It was in Yucca Valley, and they're giving the teachings at the end of the course, and about how you should do some meditation. And one of the things we teach at the end of every course, you should try to find a spot where you can meditate. We teach at the end of every course I do, see if you can have one place where you can meditate that's your space as much as possible. And see what happens. There's a lot of limitations because someone's married and there's children and there's husbands and other people in the way of having their own private little spot. And so this woman is Californian to the course. She says, there's no place in my house that I can make sacred. And he says, no. Lama says, no, you have a place in your house because you're an American. In America, the sacred place is the toilet. It's the only country in the world where they have fur-lined toilet seats and jokes for the John and house plants. Everywhere else in the world, they use the toilet, do their business, and go somewhere else. But in America, the toilet, and he says, you can go in the toilet, put the lid down, light a candle on the edge of the bathtub, lock the door. No, your husband or your children will not disturb you because you're in a sacred place. He would tease Americans just like he would tease Italians, and he would tease the other ones. It was so good, you know. Just little quirks in our culture he would tease us about, you know. So yeah. So then it was interesting. Well, Lama was also, he was about so at Sutra and Tantra, we had to have Tantra. It was very important. So the way in was Vajrasattva. So we do the Vajrasattva retreat. And he was very specific, Haruka Vajrasattva, Haruka Vajrasattva. And I don't know, some of you don't know this, but maybe it'll be explained in the story. The two of the greatest events that Lama held were held by Lama that I was part of. The first one was called the Enlightened Experience Celebration, the Dharma celebration, we still call for short, in 1981, I think it was. So it was mostly at Tushita, but it was at Kopan, Bogaya, Tushita, but mostly Tushita, yeah? So Lama Yeshe got all of the greatest lamas that imaginable to come and give their lineages. He got Ling Rinpoche, gave his Jigje lineage. Serkam, the former Kyabji Serkam Rinpoche, gave the Vajrapana lineage. He got the Dalai Lama to teach the Mahamudra to us, you know. Incredible. Lama did all this, unbelievable, you know. And back then we didn't have email. To make a phone call was almost impossible. He says, you call them up, you get these people there, quit their job. They should come to this. He didn't care. You got to come to this event, you know. So what Lama did is he brought the greatest lamas imaginable. And woe and behold, between 1981 and about 1971, 1981 and 1984, all these lamas died, including Lama Yeshe, you know. Ling Rinpoche, Trijam Rinpoche, Serkong Rinpoche, you know, it was like he brought us together to get these lineages before it's too late. He got it. Lama understood. What a great thing he did. And then with Song Rinpoche, the one who says they don't have Dharma doesn't flourish here, he begged. Song Rinpoche taught the Haruka Body Mandala. This teaching was so rare and so precious that even the big lamas didn't get it in Tibet because they weren't qualified according to Song Rinpoche, you know, they didn't get it. So we had 220 Sangha. I was one of them in the old Tushita Gompa, and Song Rinpoche's in the window box. That's where the seat is. And he's going to teach this teaching. And the first thing he does is he says, I'm wasting my time to give you people this teaching, you know, because you can't turn mules into horses. And then he says, the reason I'm doing it is because your guru, Tubetan Yeshe, begged me 3 times to give you this teaching. So I have to give you this teaching. So unbelievable. And Lama used to say, Lama King, he said, I'm afraid of him. I don't know about you people. I'm afraid of Song Rinpoche, he said, but he didn't matter. He was afraid. He knew he was going into the fire to push Long Rinpoche into giving us that teaching. And during this retreat, you see there's 3 main yidams in the Gelugpa tradition. There's Guya Samaja, Haruka, and Yamantaka. And in Tibetan, Sangde Jigsun, Sangwe Dupa, Jigje, and Korla Demchog. And during that retreat, he also had all of his Sangha do a very abbreviated sadhana of Guya Samaja, you know, just really, really simple 5-page sadhana just to do all the mantras and do the fire puja. So we complete that. But he came out to me on the porch. I was on the porch at Tushita, and he came and said to me, you know, the reason I'm having all of these Sangha do this Guya Samaja practice, and he's also told us we should do Jigje Yamantaka, it's because I want to offer to His Holiness that my Sangha have completed the 3 Sangde Jigsun. But he says, frankly, it's about Haruka. And what's important when he goes in Haruka. And he said to me, he says, Haruka, he says, because we live in the desire realm, we just live in the desire age, and your problem is desire, isn't it? Your problem is desire most of the time. Very few people, the problem is anger, not so much, your problem is desire. So you need to have Haruka, even if it takes you a lifetimes to get into it and fully practice it. You must have it. So that's why his view of Haruka, I like to quote, there's a rabbinic quote. I like a rabbinic quote. Nobody gives up their robes so they can go kill somebody. But plenty of people give up their robes so they can do something else to somebody, isn't it? It's like the problem is attachment. Yeah, the problem is attachment. It makes samsara go around, even though the first thing he says is, who says it's all bad? Trying to put things in perspective. So maybe that's also the tantric, how we use, when we say the Haruka prayer every day in the short side, and then we use this as the path. We use it as the fondness is the path, it says in the dedication in the 63. So anyway, yeah, there's thousands of stories and examples. There's no way to string them all together. I've got to be a little bit aware of time. So anyway, probably the essential thing, Lam Rim, and then we should practice the Tantra, and we should get into the Tantra. He says you have to have Tantra. I have it on a piece of paper here, I think, somewhere. In the best book in the world. Oh, yes, he just did something written here. So, Introduction to Tantra, such an incredible book. Lama Yeshe, he just explains things so clearly. But one of the first things in the book, I have this in a different source here, he says, no matter how confused or deluded we may be, the underlying and essential nature of our being is clear and pure. Like clouds in the sky, don't damage the light-giving power of the sun. And the ultimate purpose of all spiritual practice, whether they are called Buddhist or not, is to uncover and make contact with this essentially pure nature. When we've developed our own inner purity, compassion, and love, we can see their reflection in others. But if we have not contacted these qualities within ourselves, we will see ugly and limited. For whatever we see every day is nothing more than a projection of our own inner reality. So that's in a nutshell, you have Lama's teaching there, don't you, in a way? And also, if you look at it from the viewpoint of these 5 aggregates, also like from the Heart Sutra, we impute I, Jimmy, or whoever, to these 5 skandhas, isn't it? And so to make them a little less solid, the Buddha taught them that they're just 5 heaps, whatever. And so what Lama taught, basically, he didn't teach with these words, this is just an observation. He teaches further in the Introduction to Tantra about labeling ourselves. How can we be Tara? How can we become Tara? I don't have a green face. I don't look like this, like that. How can I become Tara? This is all kind of strange, And he says, Lama, well, he says, is this you? How do you know this is you? This is empty. You think you're Jimmy. You think you're this, And so it's actually equally valid. It's not ultimately true when we label an I to the 5 aggregates, but with Tantra, you're labeling I am Tara to the 5 pure consciousness, to this clear light nature of mind, which is the underlying of every consciousness is clear light, isn't it? Lama says we've got to touch that clear light. We've got to touch that. All of the practices are about getting to that stage and working with that. I'll give you another quote that was kind of mind-blowing about this. Lama Zopa, we would teach all of us who have been in the Dharma, we were taught the precious human rebirth, like the tortoise that comes up every 100 years. It's that hard to get a human rebirth, and you have to come up, put your head through a golden ring to get. And I had good friends of mine who were seriously Dharma teachers. If I ever hear that again, I just can't stand it. I don't want to be around this death. She's telling this story again, And so it was at a course at Tushita that I was teaching. And this is back in the 90s when there was only, 25, 30 people, I think, in this course. And after every course, we got to go sit with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and go down to his place and sit and ask our questions. And so at this time, one woman asked a question to His Holiness, well, what can we do about depression? And the Dalai Lama said, if it's a chemical imbalance in the mind, that's not my department. That's not my department. So, but he says, if you realized two things, if you did realize the preciousness of this birth that you have with all these conditions to be here right now, and if you realize that your nature is pure, your fundamental nature is purity, and that nature can never be mixed with the delusions. The delusions are all on top. They're like the clouds in the sun, all the metaphors. And Lama is saying that we have to get in touch with that. We have to have confidence in that we're pure, and all the rest is crap. We got to have that instead of getting depressed about that we're no good. Our fundamental nature is purity, and then we can rejoice. Boy, we can rejoice that somehow we created the cause to meet a Lama Yeshe, or meet a Dalai Lama, or meet the conditions to practice. We don't mean to be miserable. Lama used to say, oh, you miserable self-pity, oh, poor me, and making these ideas, that Lama Yeshe was scolding people once. Hey, you say, how can I enjoy ice cream here at Kopan when down in Bodha somebody's poor and starving? He says, you people are so emotional. Those people, how can I enjoy life when there's somebody else who's not? That's not the point. The point is to work for them. And he, in many, many ways, he was just, I can't even describe. Another thing that he says is, you people, you leave the best things from your own culture and you take the most nonsense things from ours. You give up cleanliness and all these possibilities to learn and all the things you have. You have wonderful things in your culture that makes life more easy. And you give those up and you come here and you have 1,000 strings around your neck and you take on all these, Tibetan things. You should take the best from the Tibetan and you should keep the best from your own culture. Don't try to go and imitate Tibetans. And we're funny, aren't we? So we need a Lama who could address that. And so, the most incredible thing is he saw exactly what we need, and it wasn't just everybody has to have this particular thing. The Dharma is the Dharma. It was never deviated it from one little bit. But His Holiness saying that, and it made me think, I've heard this precious human rebirth teaching, but I never got it. Obviously, I never got it. How could you ever get down? You'd be so grateful. I have this, and we can rejoice in it. Under the rejoicing, the most powerful thing Lama used to say about rejoicing too. Rejoicing is a way you can practice Dharma. You could practice Dharma, never even get out of bed. You wouldn't have to you could do your nando. Don't even do prostrations. Just sit in your bed and rejoice. Rejoice at all of the actions of all the great beings. And like you'll get kind of half the merit, they say somehow. That sounds funny, but you enter into the stream of that person. If you rejoice in the activities of a great being, you enter into the stream of that being. So you do kind of get what they have. And so it's a way of, because all of practice is understanding shunyata, bodhicitta motivation, and the rest is working with the disturbing emotions, et cetera, and doing, that's our practice, working on that until we can finally realize shunyata, then we're free. But in the meanwhile, we're doing that. So the ways we do that is by doing all these other practices, prostrations and purifying negativities, etc., so we can attain a Buddha. Buddha, the word for Buddha in Tibetan, when we do the first prayer, Sangye. Sang means one who has purified all that needs to be purified, and Ge means one who's attained all of the virtues. Ge, like from Geluk. And so all the practices we're doing in between is purifying that so we can come back and do it in our next life. So we have to never harm anybody. In fact, we have to give. And the other one is we make prayers to meet the Guru, like it says in the 7th limb prayer that was written by the Dalai Lama when he was 19. May we meet in our next life. May we meet our Gurus. May we meet them again. How many times have you wished, I wish I would have met the Lama Yeshe or the Dalai Lama when I was about a teenager instead of doing all this other stuff after. Well, if I could, and then somebody will come along to a course at Tushita, like it was 16 years old, and they're totally into the Dharma, and you go, wow. And they learn Tibetan by the time they're 18. We've seen that with a couple of people, haven't we? Kunpinla. It's like, wow, I want to pray in my next life. We'll meet it right away. We'll meet it quickly and not get caught up in all the crap so early, because the imprints will be, because we make a prayer. Everything you wish for comes true. That's the way karma works, isn't it? Everything you wish for becomes true. Be careful what you wish for. So if we wish to meet get a precious human rebirth, we create the cause for it. But then there's the Lama Zopa Rinpoche is teaching all the time. Is he teaching you make more merit, and then there's ways of doing that. There's ways of doing that and increasing everything you do 10,000-fold. Very first Kopan course, he's teaching you make the water bowls, and then you visualize there's 10,000 more and 10,000 more and 1,000,000 more. This is Samantabhadra way of giving. You can give a piece of bread to a beggar, and that's a good thing if you do it without showing off. Oh, I'm so generous, boom. Or you give money. But when you give a piece of bread to a beggar, you can imagine, may all of the beings in the universe be fed. And that's the imprint that goes on your mind stream. The karmic imprint from giving that one piece of bread is the karmic imprint of feeding the entire universe. There has to be a basis. The bread has to be there. So Samantabhadra taught us how we can multiply. And that's Rinpoche's way. Merit, you multiply. One of the most happy times I've ever seen Rinpoche when they were building a prayer wheel at Land of Medicine Buddha. And how many microfiche prayers you can get into this thing? 20 trillion billion. You can't put in digital. That doesn't count. It has to be an actual prayer. And he goes, wow, the merit you can make if you can pronounce that many prayers and put it in a prayer wheel. But you also have to have the mind going along with it, I think. So anyway, that's our practice. And Lama Yeshe taught us how to practice it. And he taught it in such a balanced way. So to go on and be able to get the initiations and practice, hopefully we can do both. We can do both in Sutra and Tantra. He says you have to have Tantra. You have to have it. And in his talks, it's amazing. He talks so much about so much intellectual, too much, the debating, everything, too much intellectual. He appreciated it. He wasn't putting it down, but it's really true. He's trying to teach it all in terms of ourselves rather than teaching for so long on the theory. And then the most important thing that he taught, and I like to include in every retreat that I do, he introduced to us, it was called, we used to do it at the Kopan, called, the death absorptions, the different absorptions, isn't it? We would do that. And this is the highest yoga tantra. Doing those absorptions. Kusum Lamkir, bringing into the path, the 3 kayas. And the generation stage of tantra is the main thing is doing the absorptions at the end. So when we do this practice, I like to give this Tar retreat, which isn't even a complete retreat. I put in the 7 limb prayer from His Holiness, and we do, even if people aren't initiated, we do this absorption we do the absorptions at the end. You just don't arise as the deity. because I think I do this because Lama kind of gave permission, and the people that get benefit from that, it's amazing. Two things happen. This is what we're practicing for death. We can die fearlessly. Like when we finished at the end of an avatar practice, we think, okay, everything outside of me, I absorb into myself. This creates a vision of a mirage, but because the earth element is diminished, and this creates, it's overpowered by the water element. This creates the vision of a mirage. Then we absorb down into the seed syllable. And then as the water element becomes weaker, which is part of the death process, becomes weaker. And there's all the different things that are happening in the death process that we learn also. It happens at each of these stages. It becomes diminished. It's overpowered by the fire element, and this creates a vision of smoke. And then we absorb the achung up inside of ourselves as the tam. Then as the fire element becomes diminished, and we're dying. This is all the things that happen in dying, and they happen the things when we go with these absorptions as well, which is same as dying. And we have a vision of sparks. And then when we become smaller, we absorb up to the top of the tam, or it doesn't matter if it's a re, a tam, or a hum, or a pam. We're just using that seed syllable as the different points. Just different points of the seed syllable we use for the different practices. Mostly for some of us, it's Bam, Yogini. So anyway, then you do up, and then there's the vision of a lamp going out in a dark room. And at this point, we're medically dead. And just what I was watching yesterday, some of the things Don was talking about, death and dying, we should do this. And he's teaching to people that weren't even initiated as well. We do this practice, except they can't arise as the deity. So I try to do this, gives Lama's gift. So then we absorb into the Datse, into the crescent, and only white appears, just white appears. And we know that white comes from the drop that comes down from the crown. The next one is red increase. It comes from the red drop coming up from the navel, below the navel, and we only see red, and then we're captured in darkness, and then that opens, bam, clear light. This is where we have some experience. Even doing that practice, we can get some little taste of clear light. We're trying to get closer to what Lama in His Holiness says we have to touch. We have to touch that our fundamental nature is purity. We've got to have confidence in that. Not that I'm crap, I'm deluded, I'll never make it. Our fundamental nature is purity. Our fundamental nature is purity. And I've created the cause to be able to investigate that. So all Lama's teaching is about that. The Mahamudra book, just looking at that again, trying to identify with our true nature. And that's what His Holiness, you can't be depressed if you realize what you have and you realize that your nature is pure. How could you be depressed? I'm fundamentally have everything I need to be awakening. It's just a lot of garbage on top, They're in different degrees. So it's very, very important to do those practices. Is why I like to include it in this simple Tarasana, that we do that at the end. Some people get a taste. Lama also said, just by the fact you're identifying with a seed syllable, which becomes more and more and more and more smaller, subtle, your mind becomes subtle. I was doing a 3-month meditation with Joseph Goldstein. I went back from India, and Pelgay says, we can take this course for free, 3 months with all these people. All the old students have been doing this practice for years. So there we are, used to Tibetan and rocking around and ringing our bells. And so, bam, we were put up on the dais with 2 Zen and 2 Theravada nuns, and there's 150 people meditate. We don't quite our 9 months, so we had to sit up there for 1 month. Hell, I'll never make it, but it was 3 months. But sometimes in order to make the mind quiet, I would just I dissolve myself as the seed syllable. Boom. It's amazing. For some time, you really touch it. You get right down to the point. You get right down to something quite subtle. It's a method that you can use. And Lama gave us that. And then at the end of the dissolution, there you are with the subtle, clear light nature of your mind. And this is all, at this point, this is just all we're doing in the practice. Luminous, radiating, totally free of conceptuality, like a crystal mirror that merely reflects everything that appears in it. This is our mind. So Lama, and then when you come out of that, he says, you see everything throughout the day, everything that happens. This is just a mere reflection in our mind. He taught us how we can meditate on emptiness all the time without studying 18 years of philosophy about the one thing. You know, it doesn't mean you don't study those things. You should get the idea, you should know it, but you can use this method to meditate on emptiness. As Lama says in his introduction to Tantra, which I show for all the courses, the part 2, he says, this isn't pure prasangika, this meditating on emptiness, but it works and it'll take you to a point where you can meditate. If you want to get the subtlest, it will come. You start practicing. And it's very practical if you can remember to do it. If you can remember to do it. Something appears at you that's horrible, you know, you've already judged it, you know, things appear, oh, this is no good, this is good. This is just a reflection of the mirror in my mind. It's just a reflection. There's nothing to get attached to. Getting attached to an image in the mirror, you know. So we can practice that all the time. That's the gift I like to do in the Star Retreat. At the end, you do that, you come to the end, and you can really, if you remember to do it, anything that happens to me, it's just a reflection in my mind. It's empty from its own side. You don't even have to get into the empty from its own size thing. It's just a reflection. It's just merely that. So why? Nothing to get hung up about. It's a mere reflection. Nothing to get attached to. Nothing to get reject. Nothing to be indifferent to. So he emphasized so much doing that practice, and he put it, he was giving it to beginners at Kopan, you know, to lamas. And he was criticized by the great lamas. He says, what are you doing? This is secret. You're giving away the secret, the essence of Yoga Tantra, the Kusum Namkir, this dissolution. Lama Yeshe gave a Lama Yeshe answer. He says, why keep a secret? What happens to everybody when they die? Everybody, when they die, they're going to go through this. You shouldn't be keeping a secret. They should all be practicing it every day. They can get the initiation later to practice it every day, you know. So when death comes, we're ready for it. And there's all these things that we've learned along with it. The first one, you feel like you're being crushed at the earth element. You lose the eyesight. So when this is actually happening, when we die, you can think, okay, now I feel like I'm being crushed. I'm right on schedule. I've been practicing this with my sadhana every day, and you know the clear light's coming. What everybody, when they die, every single person, when they die, they get a glimpse of the pure clear light. It's same as a yogi, the great Naropa, Tilopa, Tsongkhapa, the greatest yogis, by bringing their air into the central channel, practicing highest yoga tantra and realizing it. We get the same thing when we die, because the perfect yoga happens when we die. So Lama Yeshe is teaching this in the context of death and dying courses. So this will happen. So we train for that. But what happens is when we go into the death time grasping, I'm dying, we're grasping at a body, we get down to that point of the clear light and we're still grasping, straight into the bardo. Straight into the bardo, because we go, instead of going into the death process in a relaxed way. And this is, and as we know, when we do those visions, when we're at the vision of the lamp going out in a dark room, we're medically dead. There's no EKG, there's no heart, no brainwave. So they pull the plugs. And if you're in a hospital, no. Lama Yeshe says, and you don't want to die in a hospital. Don't die in a hospital. Don't die in a hospital, you know, because you're still there. Even people like us, for a couple of days, our consciousness can still be there, you know, until we start getting cold, and still, like Lama says, until the drop comes out the nose of the blood, and the, you know, there comes out. You're still there in the consciousness for everybody. So important to be able to be with that. And by being not afraid going into the death process, we can sit with it, even as common people, and attain some kind of realization before going into the bardo in a positive state based on what we practiced. we can go on to our new rebirth that we've created the cause for, if we have some confidence. If we don't go into that process afraid. So it's so important. So the greatest yogi that ever existed in history doesn't do it any better than we all do when we die. So that's the importance of doing this practice. And Lama made that emphasis. So yeah, you can't give that away. It's secret. Why keep a secret? I mean, that's just an incredible answer, isn't it? And so I felt really funny if I was criticizing you, you're doing this, and some people haven't had the initiation yet, even the Tara. Well, Lama Yeshe kind of gives permission as long as they don't arise as the deity afterwards. You know, they don't have the permission yet to identify as that. But even that, before that, quoting Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who wrote this short sadhana for Chidamani Tara. The first initiation that Lama gave was Chidamani Tara. Fortunately, I was there. It was after a course when I went back from America, that was given, and he gave the Tara initiation, and so all the teachings that go with that. And so when we do this Tara sadhana that we do all the time, it's a short one put together by Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe. It's just the Guru Yoga from there, and I have to add in the other aspects to it, like the three kayas practice and like the 7 in puja. And so, yeah, practicing that is just essential to be able to get some taste. Sometimes, most of the time, we fall back into our own crap. Why? Why? Because we expose ourselves to all the noise and all the advertising and all the distractions. They own us. Advertising, because there's two kinds of advertising. There's one is to make you attached, and the other to have aversion. The other is called manufacturing consent. It's getting you to hate Russia, for example. That's the latest flavor. You know, Russia. You know, everything about Russia bad. You know, 2 years ago everything was fine. Us and Russia get along fine, and so it works both ways. Mostly we're attached in it, says the advertising. And there's no way, we're so exposed to this, is very, very difficult. I feel that if you had Siddhartha he went through the 3 watches of the night, and after the last watch, he realized how the Four Noble Truths function. And just before he was enlightenment, Mara came, sent his daughters first. He sends all these beautiful ladies, beautiful, attractive, unbelievable. And you see the tonkas of this, and there was Siddhartha. He said, he's not quite awakened yet. This is the point just before awakening. And then, or just at awakening. And then the next, there's all these spears in his face. He tried to tempt the temptations of Mara, which is our own mind. You know what I think, if we want to make that story modern, Mara would have come and said, hey, take one of these, take this home with you, you know, spend the rest of your life. I really honestly believe that nobody's can get 1 point of concentration who deals with one of these. You read the conditions, according to both the Theravada tradition and the Mahayana tradition, you have to have shamatha before you have vipassana, isn't it? Shine before realizing shunyata, so, and to have a quiet mind, they're very careful that you don't have anything you need anymore, that you can, for 6 months, you keep your mind on the object, you do many sessions, you keep coming back to that, you'll be in a good place where you can meditate, you can get it 6 months. But we come from first the television culture, and then this culture. I don't know if anybody could spend 6 months away from their phone, and just the fact that they've been around this all the time, it's very, very rare. That's why more people can get shine. You get almost more people in the Hindu tradition who don't. Now they all have it. Even the sadhus have a phone. Even the rickshaw wallets have a phone. This is Mara's tool. If there's a Mara's tool, it's these things. You know, like, oh. So anyway. It gets even more sophisticated, the things that they get us attached to. And they're useful tools, but they go way beyond a useful tool. So anyway, a few small things about what Lama tried to teach us. And so this amazing being, incredible, And there's so many other stories and examples, real examples from him, and which are just incomparable. I've never met anybody like it or even heard of anybody like it in terms of being able to communicate with so many different levels of beings. So any virtue we accumulate through reflecting on the deeds of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, may it serve as a cause for our awakening, because only when we're awake will we be able to benefit all beings, including ourselves. And hopefully when we first took refuge, we put the Buddha up there. When we first took refuge, now we've absorbed them and then we think, by the virtue of doing this practice, Lama Sangye Drugyune Dowa Chi Kyang Marupa De Sala Goparsho. By the virtue of listening to these teachings, may I quickly become Lama Sangye. May I quickly become the same as Lama Buddha and lead all beings to that state. Jangchub Semcho Rinpoche, Ma Kepanam Ke Yurchi, Kepan Yambar Me Par Yang, Kone Kondu Pelwa Sho. May the bodhicitta, which has not arisen in our mind stream, may it arise. And may that which has arisen, may it never diminish, but go on increasing more and more and more. May our gurus have long lives, and may we meet them again after we die in our next life, so we can continue the practice. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I had too much to say, so I just babbled. Sorry, I get in a babble. There was no way to concisely, this idea, this story comes, but thank you very much. Yeah. Oh.
Thank you so much, Jamila. Thank you so much. Very precious, these stories.
Okay, so we close down.
I know
then?
we're all hidden here. Thank you so much, Jamila, for sharing. It has been great.
Yeah, thank you very much for attending and being patient enough to listen.
See you very, very soon at Tushita. Jamila, are you there? Now I lost you.
It's signed out.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Venerable Sayana. Thank you, Venerable Paloma, everybody. Thank you in India. It's already quite late in India. In Europe, it's getting dark. In the Americas, I think you still have, it's still morning. And tomorrow we will have Venerable Dharma for 2 days at 5 o'clock Indian time. Teaching on the 8 verses of mind training, a very important mind training Lojong text. And at 9 o'clock, we have for 2 days Venerable Thupten children from Sravasti Abbey. Yes, so we're very excited to have her for the first time again online. And she is telling us stories about Lama Yeshe because she was one of the first ones, I believe, of Lama Yeshe students. Am I correct, Venerable Sayana, Venerable Paloma? Yeah. And on the second day, I asked her to teach actually what are the days of miracles all about, because we're celebrating them. But, often we don't really know what did Shakyamuni Buddha do actually on those 15 days. So she will give a very nice, kind of story time about that, about the historical background. Yeah, so see you hopefully tomorrow, everybody, and have a good Friday, and see you tomorrow on the weekend. Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties in the beginning. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry for not able to sharing the photographs, but I hope to have more opportunities later during next 12 days. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.